The story begins when an ordinary cook working in a restaurant gets suddenly pulled into a strange world of icy skies. With him, a group of other heroes were also pulled to save this world. At that moment, a wizard wearing a cape approaches them to see each one's abilities. First thing he sees is a legendary knight carrying a legendary sword and is very impressed by it. After that, he sees two witches who have an amazing ability to control powerful elements like fire, water, and wind. But when he reaches Mukoda, he finds that his only talent is ordering things online. Mukoda looks at him like this in surprise and says to him, "And I don't have any other skills?" The wizard calmly shakes his head and says no, and tells him to go to the king to learn about his new mission. Mukoda goes to the king's palace, and the old fat king says that there is a demon king causing trouble in his kingdom named Rizz, and the heroes must go and deal with it. As soon as the king says that if they win, he can return them to their original world. All the heroes immediately agree, but Mukoda felt that something wasn't right, so he asked him calmly, "Can I skip this adventure and live normally like people?" The king laughed a little, gave him some gold, and said, "As you wish, my son." He left Mukoda from the palace, and all the people in the street stared at him because he was wearing ordinary office worker clothes. So he changed his clothes and went to rent a small room. While sitting and checking his abilities, he found he had the skill of magical storage and the skill of appraisal. He also tried the online shopping skill, so a magical store appeared in the air like a holographic screen. He put money inside the screen and bought some fast food fill his stomach and said to himself, "With this ability, I could work as a chef and earn well." The next day, he woke up early to catch the horse cart. He went to a city named Cass, and on the way, he asked a merchant who was riding next to him what he was selling. The man told him proudly he sells soap. Mukoda was shocked and said to him, "So, soap has become a treasure like this?" The merchant laughed and said to him that simple things like these are rare here, and also, the magical storage skill is almost with no one, so he carries the goods himself. Mukoda asked about appraisal skill. The man told him that's a legendary skill. Almost no one sees it. The merchant started to suspect him a little and said, "Why are you so interested?" So Mukoda said to him, "I was dreaming about it." But the man later said to him that the country intends to close its borders soon, so Mukoda felt he did the right thing when he decided to leave before things blow up. When he reached Cass, he discovered that indeed no carriages are allowed to enter or exit, and the soldiers, they were talking about how the king likes to start wars for no reason. So Mukoda was relieved he was leaving early. He went to the Adventurers Guild and asked them about guards to protect him on the road. The girl at the reception told him he must pay 7 gold coins. He was a bit shocked, but paid and said, "Better than getting lost in the war." The girl introduced him to an adventurer named Werner and told him that his team would travel with him in the morning. The next day, they moved together, and after some travel, they stopped to rest. Mukoda started preparing his mobile kitchen. The adventurers were shocked by the things he had. Strange tools and magical storage they hadn't seen before. He cooked them fresh sandwiches, and their taste was incredible. Werner felt guilty and said to him, "We can't eat such luxurious food for free." But Mukoda laughed and said, "It's fine, dude, don't worry." And after they gained their trust, they continued their journey. But some monster-like insects attacked. Mukoda was very scared as soon as something jumped on it, and the team started fighting until a wild boar appeared. They killed it, and Mukoda stored its meat in the magical storage. Then he cooked them some of its meat, heated it up. Everyone ate and felt more energetic. Mukoda was surprised and said, "I made ordinary soup, so why does it increase their energy like this?" He used the appraisal skill and saw that indeed his food boosts abilities. He was very shocked, looked at the plate and said, "I could sell myself as a slave if people found out." So he decided to keep this secret to himself. In the middle of the night, while he was sleeping, 2 green eyes were watching him from afar. The next day, he cooked them somewhat heavy food for a power boost, and they were all happy, but the joy didn't last. Suddenly, behind Mukoda, a huge legendary monster named Werner appeared, radiating terrifying energy, and Mukoda froze in place from fear. But the monster started shouting, threatening him to give him food, and after he smelled the food, he forgot all his threats and started eating voraciously like a hungry dog. Mukoda was very tense as soon as he saw the giant dog Werner standing in front of him, looking at him with hungry eyes. So he quickly started cooking other dishes from the meat to satiate. Every time he finished a meal, the dog would eat it in one bite until Mukoda emptied all the food from his magical market plate. Werner, after finishing eating, stopped like this, breathing comfortably, and said to him, "I'm surprised you satiated this little food." Then he looked at him with a strange look and said, "I want to make a contract." Mukoda froze and said to him fearfully, "A contract? No, I'm not ready to deal with a dangerous monster like you." But Werner was insistent and didn't let him speak until Mukoda looked at Werner's team and asked them fearfully, "Hey, guys, can I trust him?" They were all terrified but nodded their heads like yes. Werner approached and pressed his head against Mukoda's chest, and a bright light appeared between. The contract was done. After that, the monster sat like this, very proud, and said to him, "From today, you cook 3 meals for me every day." And Mukoda was standing there shocked, saying, "What?" Then Werner told him he wants a new name. So Mukoda said to him jokingly, "Let's call you Bob." The dog got annoyed and said, "I'm not a pet dog human." So he chose for himself the name Phil. After this shock, the team continued their way, all worried about how they would cross the border with this giant monster. Werner said, "Surely the kings of the kingdom of Finan will be obsessed with Mukoda." And Mukoda was boiling from inside and said, "Why am I walking? Why is everyone looking at me like this?" delicious. After a while, they stopped for lunch, and Phil immediately demanded his share and said to him, "Where's my food?" So Makoto said to him, "There aren't enough ingredients. Go, hunt by yourself." The strange thing is that Phil listened to the words and walked in obedience. The team was shocked and said, "What? A day ago, a legendary monster was like a small dog?" But Mukot said to them calmly, "He is fair. Whoever wants to eat must bring the food himself." After a while, Phil returned carrying a giant rockbird of a very rare type, to the degree that Werner's team had never touched anything like. Mukoto asked him, "Can I take the rest of the bird to sell them?" Phil said to him, "Take what you want, but this meat is for me." The team skinned the bird, and Mukoto started cooking lunch, and Phil started getting annoyed from waiting. But Mukoto said to him, "Wait a bit, your big meal takes time." And after they finished eating, they continued the road towards the border. Everyone was talking about Phil and said there's a rumor that he destroyed an entire kingdom out of anger. And when they actually reached the kingdom of Finan, the guards were shocked as soon as they saw him. Werner went to explain the situation to them, but in the end, they were all arrested. The captain asked Mukoto, "Is this monster really under your control?" So Mukoto looked at Phil and said to him, "Tell them you won't cause harm." Phil replied in a terrifying voice and said, "As long as no one touches my master, I will not harm anyone." The leader became tense and said to them, "Okay, pass, but quickly." After they entered, Werner cautioned Mukoto and said to him, "Surely the kingdom will investigate because of the monster with." And Mukoto sighed and said, "Man, I just came to sightsee and return to the world, but I don't want to deal with troubles every day." Werner said to him, "Then get a merchant or adventurer license." Mukoto thought about being a merchant, but one from the team said to him, "But you need the guild to help you butcher the monsters that he hunts." And the wizard added and said, "Register in both together, and that's it." And as they were walking in the city, an annoying servant came and said to him, "My lord wants to meet." And Mukoto said to him, "I'm not free, sorry." But the man kept pestering his ear until Phil got annoyed and said to him, "If you don't leave, I will wipe your master's family from existence." The servant ran while screaming. Werner said fearfully, "Surely that family will retaliate." But the wizard laughed and said, "Even the entire army of Finan couldn't handle Phil." One from the team said, "Maybe a dragon is the one who can handle him." And Phil replied with all pride and said, "The last time I fought a dragon, we were equal." After that, the team bid farewell to Mukoto, and Werner said to him, "Well, our request is finished. Goodbye, my." Mukoto went later to the merchant's guild to sell the things he had hunted. As soon as he entered, all the people stopped, amazed by the huge dog behind him. He said to the employee, "I want to register." She explained to him that the guild is independent and doesn't belong to any kingdom, and that it has 5 ranks from iron to myth, and she gave him an iron card, the first rank. And Mukoto thanked her and said to her, "I will return to sell the loot later." Then he went outside and tied Phil at the stable and sat cooking his lunch. This time, he put steak sauce on the food, and Phil was very happy. The second time, he changed the sauce, and Phil was surprised and said, "The same meat, but the taste is different." And he kept trying sauces, a lot, until he chose the favorite garlic sauce. After he ate, Mukoto made himself a plate of rice with steak, but Phil smelled the scent and tried it and turned out to love it too. So Mukoto made extra so he could eat too. In the end, while eating, he smiled and said, "Thank God I have the online ordering food. Here would drive me crazy." After dinner, he slept comfortably, but before sleeping, he prepared something simple for the day. After morning, he went again to the merchant's guild with a bag of loot. As soon as the employee looked inside, she left everything and ran, and Mukoto was standing nervously, said, "What did I do?" But she returned, and with her the manager of the guild, who said to him in amazement, "The salt and pepper you have are so pure that we can sell them to the royal family." The master of the guild offered to buy all the goods Mukoto had and asked him where he got them from. But Mukoto got confused and didn't want to tell the secret. When the man noticed he didn't want to talk, he stopped asking him and offered him 10 gold coins for all the goods. Mukoto was shocked because he had bought these spices for a few copper coins. But the master thought that his silence meant he wasn't happy with the price, so he increased the offer to 15 gold coins. At that time, Mukoto agreed immediately and said to himself that he had found a glitch in the system, like cheaters who earn gold without limits. After he took the money, he went to the Adventurers Guild to register himself. The employee there gave him a membership card from the lowest rank, G, and told him he must do 1 quest every month to maintain his membership. Mukoto agreed and chose an easy quest, which was to collect some medicinal herbs. After a few days, he left the inn and stretched like this in the sun, intending to start his day. Phil said that he won't move until he eats first. After he ate, they went together to the quest location. Phil complained that breakfast wasn't enough, so Mukoto told him to go hunt some meat until he finishes collecting the herbs. But Phil, before leaving, cast a magical shield on him to protect him. Mukoto started using his appraisal skill and collected the herbs one by one, and indeed, he finished the requirement quickly and collected some extra for cook. While waiting for Phil, he took out his cooking tools and started making lunch, pasta with minced meat and sauce. Phil returned, and with him a giant rockbird, and said that he left other monsters in the forest. Mukoto continued his cook, and Phil, as soon as he saw the pasta, was skeptical of its shape, but as soon as he tasted it, he ate it all at once. Mukoto gave him some more cheese on top, and he was happy that he could still eat foods from the old world. After lunch, they went to see the hunt in the forest, and Mukoto was shocked by the number of monsters he had hunted. He asked if it's okay to eat orc meat, and he said to him, "It's completely fine. Humans eat them." So Mukoto stored all the meat in his magical space and rode on Phil, and the the dog flew him back like a roller coaster. He returned to the guild and handed over the herbs, and the employee was surprised he finished so quick. When he asked her where to sell the monster meat, she was surprised how someone who looks weak can hunt. So he said to her, "The dog is the one who hunts." He sent her to the butcher, and the butcher, as soon as he saw the quantity, was shocked, took him aside and said to him, "There are rumors about you and your dog," but when he saw the powerful monsters he had hunted, he was sure there was something unnatural going on. The butcher said to him he would need time to butcher all the monsters. So Phil requested some orc meat for dinner, and Mukota cooked from it tender meat dishes with a delicious sauce, and he ate voraciously as usual. And Mukota, at first, was disgusted that he was eating orc, but after the first bite, he changed his mind and swallowed it all and said, "Wow, this is the most delicious meat." The next day, he went to the butcher and received his meat, with it more than 200 gold coins, and he told him that the monsters from the high ranks are a huge bounty. He gave him also a magical crystal from a monster of rank A. And between the talk, the butcher asked him about the rumors that say his dog is not a legendary ferner and is just a strong wolf. So Mukota laughed and left, saying to himself he must keep Phil's identity hidden for safe. After that, they left the city and stopped in the middle of the road to rest. Mukota asked Phil if he wants to order luxurious food from the net of the old world, and Phil's eyes were shining from hunger. As soon as the food arrived, he ate it all, and Mukota gave him a piece of Wagyu steak. The expensive Phil said, "This is very small," but as soon as he tasted it, he went crazy from the taste. Mukota explained to him that these cattle are raised specially, so the taste becomes perfect, and Phil was surprised that humans raise animals for eating instead of monsters. After dinner, Phil told him that he feels strong enough to fight the old dragon he faced before, and Mukota opened his status and noticed that eating Wagyu increased Phil's strength by 50%. Phil left him and went to hunt again, and Mukota slept peacefully on the soft mattress. In the middle of the night, Phil was running in the forest like a tornado, setting birds on fire with his move, roasting deer, and cutting orcs with his magical sword until a huge chimera monster appeared, wanting to steal his hunt. Phil got annoyed and screamed a scream that shook the mountain, hit it with a devastating lightning bolt. The monster was obliterated. The next day, he returned with mountains of meat and the corpse of the chimera, and Mukota, as soon as he saw the scene, said, "That's it, I won't order Wagyu for him ever again." After that, he asked Phil how he hunts. He told him that he uses his claws and magic. Mukota got excited to learn magic. He opened his status, but he had no magical talent, so he asked Phil to teach him how. But Phil said to him simply, "Imagine the attack, and that's it." Mukota tried to imagine a fireball coming out of his hand, but he looked like a child playing. Phil laughed and said to him, "You must feel the energy flowing in your body first." He made him touch his body so he could feel the magical energy, but Mukota got tired. As soon as he tried and decided to drop the subject after the first spark, Phil said to him, "Go train among monsters." But Mukota was afraid, so Phil simply grabbed him and threw them into a goblin camp and said to him, "Deal with it," and he went hunting. And Mukota ran from them, screaming, threw one fireball that killed one of them, but the rest were after him until he tripped on a stone and a goblin pounced on. But suddenly Phil's magical shield protected inside the barrier that was protecting them. Mukota started throwing fireballs at the goblins, and the last one actually took out few of, but after that, he fell to the ground from exhaustion and slept on the spot. Phil came in the end, carried him, and walked. Night came, and Mukota woke up startled, sweating, but as soon as he felt safe, he calmed down. He praised the last fireball he did, and Phil said to him, "Good job, kid." But Mukota started crying because he put himself in great danger. He noticed that Mukota had increased in level and gave him the body of the Goblin King and said to him, "See if there's a magic stone we can sell to get meat and Wagyu again." But the poor chef was tired and said to him, "There's no meat now." Mukota tried to get up to prepare a normal dinner, but from too much tiredness, he fell again, so he ordered some pastries from his store. Phil was sad he wasn't going to eat meat, but as soon as he tasted the bread, he said, "This is very beautiful," finished eating, and requested desserts too. But Mukota prepared it for him and said, "You'll get fat like this." Phil laughed and said to him, "I have a blessing from the wind matriarch, Nurnar. No poison or disease can come near me." Mukota got annoyed and said, "Oh God, give me understanding like him," and his voice was reaching the sky. And at that moment, a mysterious woman was sitting by a lake, laughing like. The next day, Mukota reached a new city, but the people, as soon as they saw the huge monster behind him, were shocked. The soldiers ran around quickly, so he explained to them that it's just a big wolf dog. But Phil said to him, "My suffering, I am not a dog, you idiot." After they saw his guild card, they let him enter, but they warned him and said to him that if your monster causes trouble, you could be executed or sold as a slave. Mukota entered the city and had Phil wait at the stable. He entered a bookstore to look for a world map, but he was shocked that the books were very expensive because paper is rare. He asked the old man if he had a map. The man got annoyed and said to him, "Do you think I'm Google or what?" Mukota left from the bookstore and didn't find anything useful, so he returned to the hotel, and after that, he went and ordered instant food for Phil. Phil returned happy as usual. Mukota also ate chicken and rice, but Phil was watching him while he was eating, and his tongue was hanging out. The next day, while wandering in the city, he bumped into some drunk adventurers. He entered the tavern. He was terrified by their appearance, but he sat with them and drank with them a bit, so they became friends. He asked them about the world they are in, and told them he is from the kingdom of Rezz. The adventurers told him that the king there starts wars everywhere, and that the human kingdoms and Lion Heart are better and safer, and have many dungeons for adventurers. Mukota thought about the loot, but said, I want to live, not to die. He asked them about a map, so they gave him a secret one, and said to him, take it, we memorized. Mukota gave them gold for it, but when he left, all the people laughed at him. One said to him, you could have bought a map from the guild for half a silver, but it's done. You bought the map. And he left with Phil towards the east, excited to see the sea. And up in the sky, the matriarch Nurnar was very jealous. She said, how did this human steal my servant with food? On the way, Phil took him to a lake and electrocuted all the fish with electricity and said to him, choose what you like. Mukota chose ordinary trout, and when Phil told him to take the purple one, he refused because it's poisonous. He gathered firewood and started preparing fish grills. Phil was excited very much, but Mukota was telling him, wait a bit, it's not done yet. When the food was done, the two sat and ate voraciously. Mukota opened his bottle and drank while enjoying, and Phil, after finishing, requested more. But after dinner, Mukota saw a small slime and sat wondering, how come the barrier didn't activate? Phil said to him, it's a slime, not a threat. Mukota felt tender towards it and sat feeding it, but the slime went and ate all the trash. Mukota was afraid for his kitchen and stopped it quick, but he was happy when the slime cleaned everything. After that, the slime jumped into his lap, and at first he said, has it become your follower? He was shocked and said, without a contract. And Phil said to him, that's enough. At that time, he said to him, I'll name him Sui. The next day, Mukota tried to make a stone spell, but what came out was a small sandstone. Phil sat laughing at him hard, but Mukota was happy that he could control a new element. When Phil suggested practical training again, Mukota remembered the goblin disasters and said to him, impossible. And Phil said to him, you'll remain weak like this. After that, Mukota sat to rest, and Sui went to his stone and noticed that he had gained many levels. So he thought, maybe the trash from my world is rare food. Phil cut him off and said to him, where's the food? So the poor chef got up and prepared a new meal for three of them. Mukota decided to make a dish with seasoned orc meat. Phil, as soon as he smelled it, started devouring it like he hadn't eaten for a year. Mukota looked at him and said, is he joking? Sue tried the food this time instead of eating plate, and after that, he started eating his share, enjoying it very much. After they all finished, and he felt that he had finally gotten used to orc meat, and looked at Sui while he was cleaning the kitchen tools without even being asked, and thought to himself, this way he saves me a lot of work. He decided to celebrate Sui's first real meal, so he ordered some sweet cake, green tea, and asked Sui if he likes this sweet, and the slime jumped and said to him, yes. In the morning, Phil was standing looking at the sky, and Sui woke. Mukota politely, and after he got up, Phil said to him, I got a message from matriarch Nurnar. Mukota was shocked, but Phil explained to him that Nurnar wants to give him her blessing in exchange for him sending her some sweets from the store every week, and Mukota sat wondering, a strong matriarch like her wants food? And in his heart, he said to him that this blessing will protect him from any poison or disease and increase his magic, but he must remember to send her the things on time. He asked him, how do the things reach her? Phil said to him, put them anywhere and offer them. She will take them herself. So indeed, he gathered the sweets and cakes and put them in front of him and said, this is for you, Nurnar. And suddenly, the things disappeared, and a faint light appeared from his body, and Mukota was happy and said, the blessing really arrived. And in the sky, Nurnar was sitting eating the cake, very happy and saying, this is true happiness. And after she finished quickly, she was sad, but as soon as she saw chocolate milk, she was happy again. She said, I'll leave some for later. And after 2 seconds, she had finished everything. After that, Mukota started using earth magic, and the blessing really helped him. After some training, he was very tired, so he sat next to Sui and opened his bag, took out chocolate, and sat eating while waiting for Phil to return. Phil returned after a while and smelled the chocolate scent and said to him, you ate behind my back, and started making drama. He was forced to order him special chocolate, and suddenly he got a message from Nurnar again, trying to seem mysterious, but she was drooling over the chocolate like a child, and Mukota realized this was her intention from the beginning, and he gave her the chocolate while laughing, and Phil insisted and said to him, come on, let's move to the next place. On the way, Phil asked him how he was doing with earth magic, and Mukota said to him, I'm still a beginner. So Phil said to him, then we must go to a special place. After a while, they found themselves in front of an entrance to a dungeon, and Mukota tried to escape immediately, but Phil pulled him and said, you must train him. Mukota started crying and said, this is dangerous for me. And Phil said to him, these are weak monsters. Don't be afraid. And Mukota said to him, weak? I am weak, basic. But Phil said to him, you won't progress if you remain cowardly like this. And added and said to him, the barrier will protect you, but don't go too far inside. Mukota surrendered and started preparing himself. He ordered many meals that had buffs and said to Phil, each food has a different effect, and started eating voraciously to strengthen himself. After he finished, Phil said to him, come on, let's enter. But Mukota was terrified from the entrance itself, so Phil got fed up and pushed him inside. The first monster he faced was a slime. Mukota felt guilty because of Sui, but Sui didn't spare him and threw acid at and dissolved him in a sec. Mukota was shocked, but after that he used earth bullet magic and hit another slime and saw the ground absorbing its body. Phil explained to him that this dungeon is a living being that digests everything that dies inside it, and this made it very nutrient. And as they were going down to the next floor, suddenly kobolds attacked. Mukota was startled and hit them while running. He remembered the fireball, but Phil said to him, it's still too early for you, weak, and pulled him deeper. When they went down to the lower floor, Mukoda was shocked by a full army of kobolds and said to him, "I'm not entering this battle." But Phil said to him, "Enter willingly," and threw him into the middle. The monsters attacked him. Mukoda kept screaming like girls, but the barrier protected him, and Sui was dissolving the monsters one after the other. When he saw that he was safe, he started hitting them with earth bullets and wiping them all out. After he finished the entire floor, he saw 2 kobolds running away, but a huge monster appeared and stopped. It was the Kobold King. Mukoda stood mesmerized and then ran like crazy, and Phil said to him, "You won't win while running." So he started throwing earth bullets, but the big monster deflected them easily. Mukoda kept trying until his mana ran out, and the monster attacked him. He thought, "It's the end, and my body will turn into a statue," but the blow stopped at the barrier. Phil was worried and said, "I was joking, the barrier is still working. I wanted you to take things seriously." And Sui seized the moment and attacked the monster and dissolved it completely. Mukoda fell from exhaustion and the slime started glowing. After a while, he woke up in the respawn room, and when he saw Sui, he asked him, "Are you okay?" And the slime replied to him and said, "Yes, I'm fine." Mukoda was shocked and said to him, "You can talk?" And Sui said to him, "I evolved after I defeated the Kobold King." When he looked at his status, he discovered that he was weaker than his age was 2 weeks. He asked about Phil, and Sui said to him he went to do something outside. And after a while, Phil returned with blood on his nostrils and said to him, "Bring real food now." Mukoda was upset and said to him, "How could you lie to me about the barrier?" Phil said to him, "If you weren't afraid, you wouldn't have improved." They were forced to cook a new meal, rice with egg broth from the rockbird, and they all ate and were happy. After that, he asked Phil, "Did you talk to Sui?" Sui said, "Yes, Uncle Phil is nice." Phil went crazy and said, "I'm not your uncle," and Sui started crying. So Mukoda picked him up and started coddling him. Phil surrendered and said, "Let him call me uncle." Phil was holding back his tears from embarrassment, and Mukoda was patting Sui, feeling happy that his team had grown. The next day, while they were running in the forest, Phil said to him, "We are entering the lands of the orcs and griffins." Mukoda was shocked and said, "Oh, my trouble." But Phil said to him, "They can't get close to you." Mukoda tried to go back, but Phil said to him, "We've already entered." Suddenly, some stupid orcs attacked. Mukoda hid in the trees, him and Sui, and Phil said to him, "It's time to teach them manners. The first one who attacks you," and Phil erased him from existence without even touching him. The rest saw the scene and ran at full speed, and Mukoda came out and said to him, "How did you hit him without touching him?" Phil said to him, "These are magical claws from a distance." And Sui asked, "Can we do that too?" Mukoda laughed and said to him, "You have something stronger, your magical acid spray." Phil was standing, his face saying, "Seriously? The slime stole the spotlight from me." In the middle of the night, Mukoda was filling water in a bucket like this calmly, but he was startled when he heard a strange sound coming from behind the trees. Phil got up and said to him, while stretching like this, "What's wrong? Why are you so scared? There are no orcs or anything. They won't appear again." Then Phil requested dinner as usual, and Mukoda started preparing the food while annoyed and saying to himself, 3 more weeks in this forest. Oh my god! He took out a piece of black boar meat and started making a sweet and spicy sauce on it. And after he finished, he tried to convince himself that it's chicken, not boar. But Phil didn't wait. He snatched all the food and ate it alone like a monster. And Mukoda sighed and said, "Fine," and cooked another batch for Phil and Sui to eat. And after he finished it, nothing was left for him except a small piece he made into a sandwich, and the story ended. The next day morning, Phil was running in the forest at wind speed and stopped suddenly when he saw some rare mushrooms that heal any wound, even fractures. Mukoda got down and collected them carefully and let Sui eat some of them. Suddenly, Sui started glowing. Mukoda was worried, but Sui reassured that he is fine. So Mukoda did a check on him and found he had gained a new skill, potion. Phil said to him that slimes take on the magical properties of the materials they eat. So Mukoda got excited and told Sui to try to make his first potion. The slime started secreting a liquid from his arm, and Mukoda collected it quickly in a bottle, and it turned out to be a high-grade healing potion. He was shocked and said, "Oh my, white day. This could heal a zombie, probably." And he asked Sui if he can make lower types, and he replied to him enthusiastic and said, "Yes, I can." Phil was very impressed and said to him, "Bravo, genius!" And Sui flew from happiness and jumped into Mukoda's lap, who sat spoiling him like he was his son. After a few days, they reached the griffin area. As soon as a griffin appeared, Mukoda remembered the old troubles, but the monster requested to duel with Phil in front of his tribe to prove himself. Phil agreed, but Mukoda said to him telepathically, "Don't you dare kill him, you idiot!" The battle started. The griffin flew up, hit Phil with his sharp feathers. The battle was intense until Phil used a tornado spell and threw the griffin into the sky. Mukoda got annoyed and said to him, "You crazy, you'll kill him like this." But the griffin was proud that he fought seriously with a legend like Ferner before he fell unconscious. Mukoda quickly called Sui and used the healing potion on him, and thankfully, the griffin was embarrassed from the defeat. Mukoda saw that Phil didn't get a scratch, and the griffin was happy and said, "So you really took me seriously?" And he screamed a call to his entire tribe. Their leader thanked Phil for the duel and said to Mukoda, "This is a feather from me, so you can pass through our area safely in the future." And they flew away. After the battle, Phil said to him he wants a huge feast. "I consumed all my energy." So Mukoda made him a feast from the last meat they had. He put orc meat in breadcrumbs, and the smell of the food attracted place, and he tried to convince himself that he wasn't eating half a human, but Phil and Sui finished the plate and requested more. Phil, after that, thought about the gifts he had to send to Matriarch Nernar, and Mukoda's face paled and said, "I forgot," so he quickly ordered some sweets to appease miss her. The next day, they finally left the forest, and Makoto was flying from joy, saying, "Finally, we reached the kingdom of Lion Hard." But, he said to Phil, "the meat is finished, man." And Phil immediately ran to hunt while they were walking. They saw a caravan being attacked by thieves, so Makoto said to Phil, "Save them, and I'll cook you a fantastic meal." Phil descended on them with one roar. The thieves dropped their weapons and were scared, and they were arrested. The leader, Lambert, thanked Makoto and asked him where he was going, and when he found out they were going to Carolina, he said to him, "Come with us." On the way, the guards kept looking at Phil worried, and Makoto heard them talking about how cities communicate with magical messages, and he sat mumbling, "Oh God, I hope no one covets this dog." At the rest stop, he promised the feast, but the meat was little, so Makoto made legendary nuggets. The smell was amazing, and the adventurers came to see, so Makoto mustered his courage and gave them some of the food until the meat ran out, and he didn't eat a single bite. The adventurers thanked Makoto and said, "We will guard you while you sleep," and he agreed happily. And in the end, when they reached Carolina City, they handed over the thieves to the guards, and Makoto went with them to the Adventurers Guild, and there he was shocked when he found out his membership was canceled because he didn't do monthly quests for a full month. The employee told him he would have to register from the beginning. And, "Do you want to register this slime?" All the people laughed at. After registration, he went to sell the meat, and the adventurers said to him, "Show us the rare monsters Phil hunted." And here, Makoto stopped, smiling, and said, "Wait a sec, this is a very long day, guys." After a while, they all stood shocked in front of a huge mountain of dangerous monsters piled on top of each other like a garbage heap, and only then did they believe that Phil really is the true Ferner. The butcher then was very happy and excited to work on meat of this quality. Makoto, who was always curious, asked him on the side, "Can I have another butcher cut this meat for me?" The man said to him, "No, because there are butchers who cheat or might spoil the loot." So Makoto was afraid and said, "Fine, you be the one to work on it." And he watched him cutting. He was excited to try new, strange types of meat. And at the same time, the adventurers who were with him remembered that they yesterday ate meat from him, and it turned out they were literally eating gold. They all apologized to it, but he laughed and said to them, "No problem at all." The leader, Loris, said to him, "If you need anything in the city, call me. I'm well known." So Makoto thanked him, then went to an inn to sleep, but he felt guilty that he would have to keep doing quests and selling meat. He did the math, and before he closed his eyes, he heard Nurnar's voice crying inside his head, saying to him, "You forgot me since you entered the city." So he got up, annoyed, and said, "Fine, I'll get her a gift." He bought her very luxurious things, and she was happy with them like a child, a small one. So he looked at her like this and said to himself, "Is she a matriarch or a little girl?" And after that, he slept. In the morning, he looked at the quest board in the guild. Phil said to him, "Come, let's hunt some ghosts to raise our level quickly." Makoto said to him, "Man, I still have trauma from what happened last time." But Phil said with all audacity, "I crave sushi." He changed his mind and said to him, "So all of this just to eat?" And he started imagining krakens and giant sea monsters. But in the end, he brought Sui to stand with. Makoto tried to convince him not to go, but Sui said to him, "I want to dissolve more monsters." So he surrendered and said, "Fine, let's go." They went out hunting. Sui saw 3 goblins, so he went and poured acid on them and dissolved them in a second. Makoto, while cutting their ears as proof for the quest, was disgusted, but suddenly, a large number of them appeared from behind them. Sui again sprayed acid and wiped them all out like butter. Makoto's legs were shaking from fear, and Sui asked him, "Do you want me to get more?" Phil whistled and went far away. After a while, the slime cannon finished off all the goblins in the area. Phil said to him, "Come on, collect the ears for the points." So Makoto was doing it while on the verge of nausea. After he finished, he said, "Guys, these corpses could attract other monsters or create a new maze," and suggested burning them, but he was afraid of burning the forest. So Phil said to him, "Let Sui dissolve." So he asked him, "Can you?" And Sui grew, suddenly becoming giant. Makoto opened the system and found he had gained a new skill. Sui said that he can change his size as he likes, and after that, he made many copies of himself, and all of them started eating the goblins until they cleaned the whole place. Makoto looked at Phil and said to him, "Is this normal?" And Phil himself was stunned. After that, Makoto said to himself, "This boy is stronger than all my skills." They went to rest and ate bread, and Makoto said, "Can we finish this leveling up in one day like this?" But when he returned to the guild, all the members were screaming from the sight of the goblin ears he brought. The reception girl called him and said to him, "The boss wants you." He entered the office of William, feeling nervous. William asked him about the goblins, so Makoto told him that he encountered a large tribe of men. William was happy and said to him that the city was indeed suffering from them. So this is a great achievement. Makoto was relieved and said, "Thank God they won't interrogate." But when William praised Phil for his strength, Sui interrupted the conversation and said, "I'm the one who did all the work." William was surprised and said, "You have a talking slime too?" And then he said to him, "The royal family has agreed that you can live freely in the kingdom, but if a big crisis happens, they want Phil's help." Makoto was very happy and said, "I'm free." And then William said to him, "Would you like to become C rank?" So Makoto said to him, "I'm still a beginner," but the leader said to him, "As long as Phil is with you are qualified," and brought out difficult quests for him. Makoto said to himself, "These are surely dangerous things," but Phil agreed with all confidence. And then William asked him about the monsters he hunted. He told him that he wouldn't be able to buy the chimera nor the orcs because they are more expensive than the guild's budget. So Makoto stored them again, feeling sad. As he was walking, Sui said said to him, I want to be like Uncle Phil. So Mukoda laughed. He returned home and started preparing dinner. He cut rockbird meat and adjusted the spices, and the food's smell attracted the neighbors. They all ate and enjoyed themselves. After dinner, Phil tried to sleep in the stable but suffocated from all the place. So Mukoda got him a comfortable mattress and said to him, sleep like a human being now. The next day, he went to the guild and received his new C rank card, and William said to him, from now on, you have one quest every 6 months, and then brought out a large pile of gold and told him, all the monsters you hunted were sold for about 2,000 gold coins. Mukoda was happy and said, I'm rich. And the next second, his expression changed, and he said, wait a sec, I've become a target for thieves now. Before he left, William gave him 2 new quests, hunt a metallic lizard and a herd of red bulls. Mukoda remembered that Phil used to hunt these lizards like they were beetles. Phil said to him enthusiastic, the meat of these bulls will be a masterpiece. And Mukoda started thinking of strange ideas about the dishes he would make with this, and William looked at him in fear. After that, he went to Lambert to buy a new bag for Sui. Sui saw a bag he liked and jumped into it immediately. Mukoda also bought a knife belt, a fancy wallet, and new leather boots. Lambert said to him, all of this is free, my friend. You saved my life. So Mukoda was touched and thanked him. Lambert asked him, do you still have the black snake skin? It's expensive. Mukoda scratched his head and said sheepishly, unfortunately, I sold it all to the guild. Lambert was still thinking about the beautiful red snake skin that the guild had bought recently, and Mukoda stood silent and didn't say that he was the one who sold it. As he was preparing to leave, Lambert said to him, look, Mukoda, if you find another snake skin, sell it to me first. So Mukoda agreed and said to him, okay. And as they were returning to the inn, Phil walked beside him and said to him, I'm clearly hungry. I want to eat nuggets again. Me and Sui, before we go hunt the metallic lizard. So Mukoda laughed and said to him, okay, sir. They returned home, and Mukoda entered the kitchen and started cooking enthusiastic. He put the meat in the sauce and marinated it well, and after that, started breading it twice to make it crunchy. The first batch was finished and Sui ate it. In the second, they said to him, more. So Mukoda laughed and prepared more batches, and after he filled them up, he sat eating too while watching the full moon in the sky, feeling a strange comfort. The next day, they reached the metallic lizard's location. Phil said to him, open the map, Mukat, and see where we are. And after making sure, Phil ran at an incredible speed to smell its den, and when he arrived, he found a huge cave in the forest. Mukoda said fearfully, maybe I should wait outside? But of course, Phil ignored him and dragged him in forcibly. Inside the cave, Phil spotted the lizard wild. It was eating iron, and Mukoda noticed its body was glowing and sparkling. It turned out it had evolved and became a mithril lizard. Phil said to him, be careful, this skin is anti-magic, meaning magical attacks won't affect. So Mukoda said to him, oh my trouble. But before he could finish, Phil had finished the matter with an electric shock that turned it to charcoal a second. Mukoda sat mourning its soul and said, God have mercy on, and stored it in his bag. After that, he collected some raw mithril ore from the cave to make armor for himself. But Phil looked at him and said to him, armor? What armor? My barrier is stronger than any metal. And after that, he carried him and ran towards the Red Bull's colony, saying he wants to eat meat. They arrived there, and he said to him, I will sit here in peace. And Phil said to him, okay, and left him alone. But Sui came out of the bag and ran after him. Mukoda decided to watch from afar, and suddenly a strong wind blew, and the smoke dissipated, and the scene of all the bulls dead, their souls rising to the sky, appeared as if they had gone on a trip. Sui returned proudly and said to him, I cleaned them all. And Mukoda was standing, not believe he started, trying to carry the corpses and put them in his bag, but the number was overwhelming. Hey? So Sui replicated himself into dozens of copies to help. After they finished, they sat making orc meat and rockbird sandwiches, and the smell was insane. Sui saw Mukoda drinking soda and said to him, what's this? So Mukoda gave him some, and Sui drank it all in a second, and Phil came to see what happened, drank a whole bottle too, and after that, sat, belching like an old bull. They returned to the guild with the mithril lizard, and William was shocked and said to him, we must report this to the king immediately. And the butcher said that metallic lizards are very rare, and that this evolution means it found a new mithril vein. And William said to him, this is a golden discovery. Sell it to the king, and he will give a respectable reward. And when he told him the number, 5,000 gold coins, Mukoda's face paled and said, I'm rich, and this is very dangerous. The butcher then became jealous of him and said, he is suffering from too much money. And William said to him, wait for a bit until I prepare the payment, until we finish the bull mat. Before he finished his words, Mukoda suddenly opened the storage and emptied the entire herd in front of him, and William sat unable to speak. After that, Mukoda started to worry that he might be targeted because of the mithril mine, but Phil cut off his thinking and said to him, where's dinner? His stomach opened up and he said, oh right. He started cutting the meat into large slices, prepared the spices, and heated the pan. The smell of grilling was crazy. He wrapped the meat in foil and let it rest, and Phil and Sui sat waiting like children, and as soon as it was done, he ate, and each felt like they were flying. Phil said to him, where's my special treat? So Mukoda put garlic sauce on the next bite, and the result was Phil closing his eyes from happiness. After the meal, Phil stretched out, being full, and Sui saying to him, your food is a masterpiece, Mukoda. So he smiled and said, I'm lucky to have. He finished the dishes and returned to his room to give Nirnar her gifts. He ordered her some sweets from the store, but she said it's too little, so he got her a fancy cake and pudding, and she was flying from happiness. But suddenly, they heard other voices. 3 new matriarchs entered the call, angry at Nirnar for eating all all the sweets alone. The big matriarch, Key Charles, said to him, I am the Earth Matriarch. If you use Earth magic, I will strengthen it for you. After her, Agi said to him, and I will increase your fire magic. Mukota was lost among, and Nurnar was trying to defend him and tell them, enough already. Blessings will make him explode. So the two decided to give him small blessings. Mukota asked them, so is it normal for me to have all these blessings from multiple matriarchs? They said to him, no, it has never happened before. But Agi said, it doesn't matter, and blessed him forcibly. And Key Charles did the same. Nurnar was upset and said, now I have to share my human. But the third matriarch spoke calmly and said, what about me? And introduced herself as Rusilka, the water matriarch. When she found out he had no water magic, she started crying. So they all said to him, catch up with. Mukota was lost, but Sui said to him, I can help. So he thought and said, okay, let Rusilka bless Sui instead. So Rusilka blessed Sui with a huge water blessing. And after everyone calmed down, Mukota sent them a big box of sweets and slept after that, smiling. The next day, he tried his magic. He threw a fireball and it came out much stronger. After that, he tried stone magic and it was also strong. Sui made a huge water ball that destroyed a giant tree, and Mukota said to him, don't you dare try this on anyone. While he was training, Phil returned with new monsters, and Mukota was building a new house with earth magic. Phil entered and said to him, the black boar first for dinner. So Mukota said to him, okay. The next day, Phil sent a message to go hunt more meat. So Mukota said, enough, let's sell the snake skin to Lambert first and receive the meat from the guild. They went to the guild, and the butcher handed over the bull meat with the money and told him they are still working on the mithril lizard. Mukota said to him, okay, and gave him the black boar to prepare. He returned home and started making lunch. He put the meat in a grinder, and Sui was mixing it at an incredible speed. He mixed it with onion, eggs, and breadcrumbs, and it looked like burgers, and he grilled them, and the smell was fantastic. After eating, he went to wash himself, but his soap was broken, so he decided to order fancy soap and shampoo from his store to use them and sell them to Lambert. When the soap arrived, he took it to the shop and started showing it to Lambert, who, as soon as he saw it, said, this isn't soap, this is magic. And when he saw the rest of the products, shampoo with honey and body perfume, he was looking at him as if he were a leader descending upon. He said to him, next week is my wedding anniversary, and my wife is tired of bags and skins. This gift will make her fly from happiness. Mukota said to him, does she like baths? He said to her, she adores them. So he said to him, well, I want a bathtub too. Lambert had a very fancy one and said to him, but it's expensive. I need a few gold coins? Mukota said to him, no problem, I have money from the monsters. And Lambert sat and introduced him to a special bathtub mate. The next day, Mukota returned to the shop, and when he opened the door, he was greeted by a very smiling woman who said to him, I'm Mary, Lambert's wife, and said to him, thank you so much. My husband has become like a normal human after your shampoo. And she told him that the conditioner magically transformed her hair and made it soft and shiny. Lambert entered and said to him, Mukota, we must sell these things in the shop immediately. Lambert was standing, looking at Mukota, and said to him that he wasn't very sure about the idea of selling soap when he is basically a leather merchant. But his wife entered and said to him enthusiastic that this rare soap will break the world and will be an instant success. After she said that, she looked at Mukota and said to him, I wish he would sell this soap in Lambert's shop. And he agreed quickly and said to her, he doesn't know any other merchants anyway. After finishing delivering the goods and leaving them, he returned to Phil's place, and Phil said to him, is he excited? Should we go hunt again or what? But Mukota refused and said to him, no, because the guild leader has arrived in the city and wants to meet. So he left Phil a bit annoyed and went. As soon as he entered the guild leader's room, Mukota screamed from shock. In front of him, mountains of gold were piled up like in treasure movies, and with the 6,000 gold coins he took, he said, that's it, I'm going to get the fanciest bathtub in the world. But before he could celebrate, the guild's secretary entered, running, and said to William that adventurers were badly injured by wyvern monsters. They went down quickly to see what happened, and the secretary said the attack was on the city's outskirts. When they arrived, they saw people severely wounded, and William started requesting healing potions from the people around. Mukota quickly took out some potions that Sui made, and as soon as they drank them, the injured recovered in a second, as if they had taken a senzu bean from Dragon Ball. William looked at him suspiciously, but ordered his men to take the people to the dock, and after that, declared a state of emergency for a quest to eliminate the wyverns that got out of control. Mukota wanted to sneak away quiet, but his low rank obligated to participate. Before he could open his mouth, Phil entered and said confidently, leave them to me, I will finish them off myself. Mukota tried to stop them, but Phil was bored and said he craves wyvern meat for lunch. William offered to help, but Phil said to him coldly, your presence will only slow me down, and left him and went. Him and Mukota, who didn't know what to do. They reached the monster place, and Phil looked at the sky and said, I will teach Sui how to hunt these birds today. As soon as the wyverns descended and attacked, Phil took Sui on his back, flew towards them, said to him, aim for the head or the neck if you want to kill them quick. Sui hit one, but it didn't hit the head, so it fell screaming, and Phil cut its head off with all calmness. After that, Sui started hitting them like a machine gun, and Mukota was hiding behind a rock, trembling, saying to himself, this innocent boy Sui learned violence from Phil. And suddenly, one of the monsters attacked him from behind, gave him a hard hit, but Phil's magical barrier activated and saved him. Phil and Sui arrived at the last moment, cut the monster in half. After they finished the slaughter, the two said in one voice, hungry. So Mukoda took out leftovers of the burgers he had made, put them in egg and breadcrumbs, and fried them, and they all sat eating in the wilderness, as if they were at a fancy barbecue. And at the guild, the secretary was terrified, but William said to her confident, don't worry, as long as the killer dog is with him, no one can defeat them. And indeed, they were a bit late, so all the people were worried. But at night, they returned. The entire guild turned into celebration when they found out they had eliminated all the monsters. William said they were terrified the city for a while and thanked Mukoda great, but Mukoda felt guilty when he said that because in reality, he was eating burgers at time, and he almost blurted it out and said proudly, we were eating the monsters. And William was shocked when he found out they skinned the monsters before his eyes like that, and said to him, I will process the meat for you for free, but with half the money. But Mukoda said to him, it's fine, and handed over the meat. He wouldn't rest at night. He remembered the matriarchs who blessed him, sent them sweets. But Agi sent him a message saying to him that she is upset because her share is small, and Nurnar sent him secret telling him to increase her share, and Ki Charl requested hair products, and Rusilka said she wants meat. Mukoda said to them that if he sends gifts, all of will know, so they all fell silent and were embarrassed. And Agi exploded in anger that they talked to him behind her back. Mukoda wished the earth would swallow him from embarrassment. The next day, he and Phil went to the bathtub shop, and as soon as he entered the place, he was captivated by the beauty and luxury. The owner was showing them the types, and Mukoda chose the simple green bathtub like this and told him to prepare it quick. The man was surprised and said to him, will you pay all of this in cash or installments? Mukoda laughed and took out a huge bag of gold and threw it in front of the man. Was shocked and said to him, if you want someone to deliver it to you. But Mukoda simply stored the bathtub in his storage space. As he was walking in the street, he said to him, let's leave the city. All the people have started looking at us strangely after the Wyver battle. They left for a quiet forest, and Mukoda started setting up the bathtub. Phil left him and went hunting, and Mukoda built walls of stone around the bathtub for privacy, and Sui started filling it with water, and he heated it with his fire ball and put bath salts in. He entered the bath and said, ah, and washed all the tiredness and dirt off, and drank a bottle of milk after that. After he finished, he started preparing Wyver meat. He cut onions and sauteed the meat, and made a thick sauce and poured it over the rice. But Phil was late, so he said he would make another pot. He brought vegetables and bottles and made a hot stew, and suddenly he heard Sui saying to him, Phil is back. He went to look, and in front of him was the corpse of a giant dragon. Phil very proudly said to him, I was bored of the Wyvers, so I killed an earth dragon. Mukoda started screaming, not believing what was in front of him, and said, what will we do with all of this? No one will buy a dragon anyway. Phil said to him, at least take the meat. But as soon as he saw the food, its smell was nice. Mukoda said to him, you won't eat before you bathe. Phil got annoyed and said to him that he is always clean, but Mukoda insisted and ordered dog shampoo for him from the store and started washing him himself. Phil felt insulted and said, you're treating me like a dog. But Mukoda kept washing, and when Sui started playing with the water, Mukoda got an idea to use Sui's body as warm water pipes, and indeed, he made a full shower for it. At first, he was embarrassed, but after a while, he enjoyed it and said to him, more on the face. And after the bath, he shook his hair, so the water splashed on Mukoda and washed him too, so he was forced to use magic to dry himself. And Phil was proud of his appearance and said to him, I am like the cleanest dog in the world now. And then he asked about dinner as usual. Mukoda presented him the Wyver stew. Its smell was fantastic. As soon as he tasted it, Phil forgot everything and sat eating voraciously. And after he finished it, Phil asked about the second pot. So Mukoda said to him that it still needs time, and they agreed to return to the city. And when they returned, Mukoda tried to sell the dragon to the guild, but William said to him, we haven't even taken a single claw from it. Phil said to him, at least cut the meat. But Mukoda thought that the remaining parts are too expensive. William advised him to go to Dulane City because there is a guild there that can deal with the dragon. And when Phil heard it's close to the sea, he was very happy and said to him, we will hunt sea creatures too. And Mukoda agreed and said, okay. All the people in the guild laughed at him as he was leaving and said he is the strangest and calmest person in the world who deals with a dragon as if it were a chicken. And in the end, before he left, he bid farewell to all his friends. And William gave him a map for the journey and said to him, take care of yourself here. Mukoda finished all his preparations, he and his team, and left to explore a new world. And after a while, in a dense forest full of trees, some huge, terrifying spiders appeared around a small rabbit. The spiders started approaching, and when one of them tried to snatch it to feed on it, Phil suddenly saved the poor rabbit with a strong electric shock. Phil set fire to the entire spider colony and wiped them from existence. After he finished, Phil asked Mukoda if there are any more spiders. His legs were hairy. Mukoda said to him, no, they are all finished, but he sat wondering what to do with their hairy corpses. Phil laughed and said to him, that spider meat from inside is very tasty. And suddenly, the little slime Sui came out of Mukoda's bag, and he was sad that Phil finished them before he could play with. Mukoda tried to calm him down, but Phil started complaining and said to him, you always spoil Sui. Mukoda got annoyed and said to him, and you, every once in a while, you cry to me to make you food like a small dog. As soon as he heard the word snacks, his eyes lit up and he said enthusiastic, well, make me some then. Mukoda sighed and said to himself, there's no use, and started work. He put the spider corpses in the magical storage he had and took out the meat he had. He noticed the varieties quantities were few, so he decided to make a Japanese recipe called gyoza. Sui got very excited, but Makoto said to them, "Surprise, wait and see." He opened his magical store and ordered some spices. As soon as he saw the store, Phil said to him, "Get some wagyu," but Makoto said to him, "According to plan, today we buy spices only." After that, he started cutting vegetables and mixing them with spices, sauces, and meat, and after mixing them well, he made the dough and stuffed the gyoza, and Sui helped him enthusiastic. The two of them finished all the filling and made 2 large plates of gyoza. Makoto put them in the pan and fried them on medium heat, and after that, flipped the pan so the gyoza appeared browned in the color. It was amazing. Makoto was about to explain the recipe all pride, but they attacked late before he could say a word. From the first bite, his expression changed from a hungry monster to a professional food critic and said, "The flavor is amazing and the tenderness is fantastic." As for Sui, he was melting the gyoza inside his slime body. With their speed, they finished the plate in less than a minute, so Makoto was forced to make a second batch, though he was tired. But they didn't notice that a small dragon was watching them from above the tree. After they finished eating, finally, Makoto sat eating from his small plate, enjoying the leftovers they left for him. But suddenly, a small dragon flew and jumped onto Makoto's face. Makoto froze for a moment. He was seeing this flying lizard looking at him with innocence, and then he screamed in shock. "What is this?" He asked Phil about it. He said to him, "It's a very rare dragon named Pixie Dragon." Makoto was shocked and said, "Seriously? This is legendary," and looked at the small dragon while it was following his hands that had the gyoza. So Makoto understood and gave him. The dragon hugged the entire gyoza with his small body, and as soon as he tasted it, his eyes lit up with happiness, and he finished in seconds. He kept asking for more, so Makoto gave him another one to eat. While watching him eat, he said to himself, "Yeah, he looks very cute." But Phil cautioned him and said to him, "Don't be fooled by appearances. This dragon is small, but he can use all types of magic and wipe out an entire army if he gets upset." And at that moment, the dragon finished his food and flew back onto Makoto's face again and stuck to him with affection. And Makoto stood mesmerized between terror and the energy and cuteness. The dragon's body started glowing quickly. Makoto could remove him from his face, and suddenly he heard a voice inside his head requesting delicious food, and this made Makoto very confused. Phil said to him that the new dragon decided to join their team and become his familiar, and also he can communicate with everyone through telepathy. So Makoto understood that his expenses would increase hugely like this, and he has another mouth to feed. As for Sui, she was very happy because she would get a new friend, and she looked at Sui, and the new dragon praised her for her cooking. The surprise before they started introducing themselves to each other, Makoto stopped them and said that he hadn't agreed to accept the dragon as a familiar for him. He asked the dragon if he really saw himself worthy of being followed just for the food, but the small dragon said to him that he is very worthy. Phil accepted the dragon into the team and said to him that a few contracts to help a weak human don't need anything in front of ancient monsters like. And when the dragon agreed with Phil, Makoto was surprised that all the arrogant legendary monsters in this world are just gluts. After that, the dragon thought he needed a name, so Makoto named him Dora-chan. But Dora started complaining that a powerful creature like him shouldn't have a cute name like this. But Makoto refused to change his mind when he checked Dora's status. Makoto said to him that the system accepted the name, it's done, and he can't change it. And at that moment, he also discovered that Dora is 116 years old. Phil told him to accept his fate, and Sui was happy and said she loves his name, and Makoto felt the 3 weirdos would get along. Well, after a few days, Makoto's team reached Cray City, and he was registering Dora as a new familiar in the Adventurers Guild. The employee told him that the guild master has a special request for him, and Makoto was surprised why his help is needed. And suddenly, the guild master appeared, Ralphlo, and started joking about his new dragon. And when he saw Makoto confused, Ralphlo explained to him that he has an exploration quest for the forest in a private room. Ralphlo said that the forest monsters have become strangely aggressive, so Makoto suggested they avoid forests for now. And this angered the dwarf leader, who said to them that the city needs the silk that comes from forest monsters to make clothes. Makoto understood that the city is in a difficult situation, but he is afraid to face the dangerous monsters. But Dora said to him that the forest is full of spiders, and the matter is simple, and this reminded Makoto of his last experience. Ralphlo was confused because he couldn't hear the telepathic conversation between Makoto and his dragon, and Phil confirmed to him that he had taken care of all the spiders. So Makoto brought out a spider corpse from behind. The sight of the spiders almost caused Ralphlo a heart attack, because these are the same monsters he was talking about, and he asked why he has them. He said Charlie Phil, and Phil said just that he punished the spiders for their bad behavior. Makoto felt that there was a problem because he stole the city's income source, but Ralphlo revealed that the forest is actually full of these spiders, meaning he solved their problem. He was happy with his quest. Ralphlo said to him that he can sell the spider materials for good money and cook the rest of them in delicious ways. Makoto and Phil and Dora started drooling over the boiled meat, and finally, Makoto agreed when Sui requested to try it. Meanwhile, the guild was processing the spiders, and the team explored the clothing market. Makoto saw soft fabric, fell in love with it immediately, but was surprised by its insane price, 1 gold per piece. But after that, he understood that the fabric is worth. The shop owner told him that other cities don't sell the this fabric at this price, and this made Mukoda buy the remaining gold and store many clothes before returning to the guild. Ralphlo worked on all the processed meat and explained that he left the external shell on the legs so the meat wouldn't lose its flavor. Mukoda noticed that spider legs are like crab legs. Ralphlo broke a crunchy leg and gave him a piece of tender meat, and Mukoda loved the meat immediately. His friends came to request and eat without hesitation. Then they announced they would have a crab party, and Mukoda prepared delicious side dishes with the boiled legs. He said to Dora to enjoy the food as a welcome party, and Dora was very happy. During the meal, Mukoda let his familiars eat while he prepared a special plate for himself of grilled spider legs, but his friends requested to take them too, so Mukoda was forced to hand them over. And while grilling the second batch, Dora said to him that he is happy he caught up in all of this, and this surprised Mukoda. The dragon explained that he was always missing out because Phil is very fast. Mukoda understood that the spiders were afraid of Dora, and Phil attacked them without any mercy. Feeling guilty towards the weak creatures, he decided to reward them in the best way and enjoy their delicious remains. After dinner, Mukoda made a special bath in the guild's stable and relaxed with Sui by the fire. They slept in the stables, very tired, and after he got out of the bath, Mukoda went to bed, thinking he had forgotten something, but he slept before he could remember. In the morning, he returned from the guild, and Ralphlo returned the spider shells to him, gave him some food leftovers. He thanked Ralphlo. He was happy, but Mukoda felt he had to give him more. He started taking out the Earth Dragon's corpse, but remembered it was too powerful and might cause a huge shock if he wasn't careful. Finally, Mukoda let Ralphlo see the dragon, and the man was shocked. He said that Mukoda could buy an entire kingdom with, but Mukoda asked if he could find someone to process the dragon meat first. After thinking, Ralphlo remembered that there is someone in Dulane City who can help him, and gave him a recommendation letter to the one in charge of the guild there. Before the letter, Ralphlo said to him that the guild master in Dulan is very talented, but he has a somewhat weird side. After that, Mukoda and his team left Cray, ready to visit their next destination, the city of the fortified towers. When they reached Dulan, Mukoda was very excited to explore, and Phil was excited for the difficult challenges. But Mukoda, who is known to be coward, didn't want to enter the towers, but his familiars reminded him that he is going to process the Earth Dragon meat, excited for the food. They entered the huge city quickly, but all of them had to wait in line at the city borders. Dora was surprised and said, "Why don't they just enter?" So Mukoda reminded them that they can't bypass security like that, as if they were illegal people. After Mukoda calmed his pets, the people at the back of the line finally noticed the legendary monsters behind them. When they saw them, they were scared like us. Mukoda quickly said to them that the monsters are just familiars. When the guards came to inspect the chaos, Mukoda told them that he is just here to meet the guild master. When they saw his guild card, the guards were surprised if they could trust him or not. And suddenly, a handsome elf appeared. The elf said that Mukoda is his guest because he has all the rare monsters. When the elf Rand introduced himself as the guild master of Duline, his eyes widened when he saw Dora on Mukoda's shoulder. The elf took Mukoda and his familiars inside and said that Ralphlo had explained everything to him. And then Rand brought a magical dragon perch so Dora could sit on it. But Dora found Mukoda's bag more comfortable. When he saw Rand relaxing like this, he started writing all his notes for research, and the elf was surprised why he was behaving different from the record he had. Rand remembered the Earth Dragon and started taking notes from the storage to process it, but his assistant, Ugur, interrupted, reminding him that he has a meeting with the Merchants Guild leader. When Rand tried to postpone the meeting, Ugur gave him a killing look. When they reached the storage, Rand asked Mukoda to show him the dragon, remembering how terrifying legendary monsters are. He remembered the days when he held a big party to kill a dragon, and they were at that time just D-rank adventurers, and he wasn't allowed to process dragon meat after the incident. Rand trained hard until he became an S-rank adventurer just to see another dragon. Now his dream came true when Mukoda displayed the giant dragon in front of him. When he saw the legendary monster, Rand started trembling from greed and pulled out scary experiment tools to start examining its meat, and he was measuring everything important about the dragon for research. Phil was surprised why he wasn't just giving him the meat. Mukoda calmed his hungry dog before Rand asked. He said Dora likes to eat what? Mukoda said to him that Dora doesn't have a preference and eats anything he cooks for him. This information turned Rand's world upside down because according to research, pixie dragons are vegetarian. But Mukoda explained to him that he eats almost anything, especially meat. Rand got more confused when he found out that Mukoda communicates with the dragon through telepathy and started asking him a million questions about his monsters. Luckily, Ugur pulled him away and apologized for his master's strange behavior and assured him that Rand is very skilled in processing meats despite his amusing actions. Phil was waiting for the expensive meat, and Rand wondered if Phil wasn't interested in the dragon's skin and other materials. But Phil was only interested in filling his stomach, and when he saw Rand, Phil looked so desperate that he started begging Mukoda to let him taste the meat. He told Rand that Phil had decided who gets his share of the meat, so Phil felt it was fair if he was allowed to take some good meat. After that, Mukoda and his team ran out, tired from too much of Rand's questions. Phil remembered how much the elf had bothered them, questions, and millions of research questions, and he couldn't process the entire dragon in one day. Now they felt as if their lives were meaningless when they saw them all hungry. Mukoda decided to order fast. Dora was surprised because he had never seen an online store before, and when he saw it, Phil asked Makoto if he could get him Wagyu this time. But Makoto noticed there was a festival in Japan, so he ordered festival. When the food arrived, Makoto took out a strange pot and said he would cook vegetables. Phil hated plants, but Makoto told him to be patient because the taste becomes good. He heated the pot and put all the vegetables on the side before adding the meat and pouring all the sauce over, and when the food was ready, he gave Phil half of. Phil was upset because half the plate was vegetables. Makoto told him to try and took a bite, and with time, Phil enjoyed the taste and requested a second portion. After he finished, Makoto was happy and fed all his familiars. After that, he took out some buttered sandwiches. Sui tried one and loved it immediately, and then the other two came to see, and Dora wondered if the sweets were good too. Makoto gave them some, and when they tried them, they loved them, but the sandwich was too small for them, and they started asking for more. Makoto was surprised by their greed. The next day, Makoto, who was very tired, went to the Adventurers Guild after his familiars annoyed him all night because of the dragon. He met Yuger, and Rand came out of the storage as if he had run 5 marathons. Very excited, he told them that he spent the entire night in research and experiments on the dragon's body and is now ready to process it for real. Rand took out a special mithril knife to cut the dragon's skin, but when he tried to cut it, the knife shattered like glass. All the people were surprised, and Rand started crying because he broke the precious skin treasure. Phil asked how he would process the meat without a knife, and Rand said he needed to get a knife stronger than mithril, so he must wait. The news put Phil in a state of severe depression, and he fell to the ground. Yuger told them that the guild doesn't have other mithril knives and told Makoto that they need raw mithril from the towers to make a new knife. Phil was ready to run there immediately, but Makoto stopped him and reminded him that if he enters the towers with all his power and destroys everything for a bit of myth, he will become very famous and ruin their quiet life. After Makoto's warning, Phil calmed down a bit, and Makoto started preparing lunch. To cheer him up, he took out thin slices of orc meat and prepared them with the leftover sautéed vegetables from before. He flipped the ingredients in the pan and added the sauce and spices. After the food was ready, he poured it all over fragrant boiled rice. Before Phil ate, Makoto cracked an egg on the plate to make the taste better. When they all started eating, they forgot all about the expensive dragon meat. Makoto was relieved that he didn't need to deal with their complaints, but he knew he had to solve the dragon problem soon. The 4 matriarchs were crying because Makoto wasn't sending them gifts. Suddenly, 2 angry men appeared because the girls were exploiting their connections to blackmail the weak Makoto. Makoto told them to leave him out of it, but the men brought in one who introduced himself as the smithing matriarch named Hephaestus, and the second as the war matriarch named Vahan. Makoto knew that Hephaestus was a blacksmith and asked him if he could do something about the knife. Hephaestus said that he could enhance any knife and make it the highest quality. Of course, he wouldn't give the blessing for free. He requested from him some alcohol. Vahan was interested in the strange items from the supermarket, Makoto, and this angered the girls. Hephaestus ignored them and focused on granting Makoto his blessing, but he noticed that Makoto wasn't talented in smithing, and then he drew his attention to Sui and saw that she had great potential. When Makoto saw that Hephaestus couldn't enhance his power, Vahan decided to take the opportunity and strengthen his combat abilities, but Makoto refused and said to him that he doesn't like fighting. But Vahan thought that he would soon enter the towers soon and started thinking of another target. So Makoto said to him to bless Phil and Dora, and they blessed Phil and Dora and Sui. Makoto requested to offer some offerings to all the matriarchs. After they took the offerings, the boys enjoyed their food and the girls were happy with the cosmetic products. And Makoto remembered that in previous times he forgot to make an offering to Nurnar, so Nurnar made sure he wouldn't forget her next time. Makoto felt distressed that he would have to make more offerings to the matriarchs. After that, he focused on teaching Sui smithing skills and thought the towers would be a good opportunity to test his new abilities. But Phil mentioned they had some pure mithril from the lizard they killed. When he remembered the ore, Makoto asked Phil if he wanted to hunt in the towers, even though they had some, but the wolf was content with waving his hand. Then Makoto went into the tool storage and took out the mithril pieces and asked Sui to make them into special knives. Sui took the pieces and melted them inside his body, and after a time of bubbles and fuss, out came a beautiful crystal. Makoto noticed its high quality immediately and was happy that he wouldn't have to risk their lives in the dangerous towers. But Phil was a bit sad that he wanted to try eating strange monsters from the towers. After that, Makoto went to Rand, who was in an existential crisis because he couldn't find a knife better than myth. When he saw Makoto like this, he gave Yuger the mithril knife that Sui made and asked him to give it to the elf. Rand brought the knife close to the dragon's body very carefully, afraid even of small mistakes that would break the knife and his hope again. But the knife cut through the tough skin easily, and Rand was surprised by the quality. Asked how Makoto obtained such an amazing piece, and Makoto pretended he got it from a secret source. Rand was about to ask for Makoto's seats, but calmed down and went to finish processing the dragon. Makoto was surprised how long it would take to process the entire dragon, and Rand told him at least 3 days. Phil was sad as he still needed to wait, but Makoto thought that the dragon is a huge monster with a large quantity of meat, and Phil agreed, but he suggested exploring the towers while Rand was working with magic. Makoto refused to go because because he was afraid of the dangers, but Sui started urging him to let participate too. After a while, they reached the entrance to the towers, and the receptionist told Mukota that their journey could take a full month and advised him to bring a large quantity of food if he intends to go to the deep floors. And he told him that no one has reached floor 30 before, and this made him think to withdraw and go home. But Phil looked at him angrily, and Mukota reminded them that if they didn't gather a large quantity of delicious food, they would be forced to eat rotten leftovers in the dark. So this convinced them, and they agreed to wait. Mukota was happy and took them on a shopping trip and bought a lot of vegetables to cook for them towers. And then he noticed a magical stove in front of a shop. Phil was surprised why Mukota wanted such a big stove, and Mukota explained to him that it would be very useful for cooking. So the shop owner came out and started promoting his products to him. He explained that the stove has a huge oven that can cook entire cicada monsters, and this made Mukota excited to try new monster recipes. When he asked about the price, the shop owner told him 860 gold coins. Mukota almost had a heart attack, but Phil pushed him to buy it because his stomach is insatiable, and the others also pressured him, and in the end, he agreed to purchase the magical stove. At night, Mukota started cooking dinner in the big pot and asked Sui to help and started distributing tender pieces of meat to his team. The next day, he decided to cook enough quantity for the upcoming days in the towers. The first recipe was grilled orc leader meat. Then he made cabbage rolls wrapped with red pork. After that, he made a simple dish of fried meat and vegetables. And while adding the ingredients for frying, he felt satisfied that he utilized all the remaining ingredients. After that, he made a big orc meat soup with vegetables. And after that, he made a wiver stew with a rich sauce. But Phil tried to add sauce while he was mixing. When he finished all the dishes, Mukota felt they were ready for the first days in the towers. His hungry friends were encouraged to eat, but he reminded them that all this food is for the towers only. After that, Mukota was cleaning his room, and Sui entered with him with a sword he made for him. Mukota liked the sword's blade and thought that with this knife, he would be safe in the towers. Sui was on his shoulder, happy to help his master, but Yuger knocked on the door and told them of an urgent matter. He explained to them that the earth dragon had been fully processed, so Mukota went to prepare the goods before going to the guild, but Yuger stopped him and said that he is busy and can't wait for him at the door. Mukota felt guilty and went to the guild, and there he found Rand very busy with the dragon's blood, bottles that were glowing. Rand ignored Mukota completely, so Mukota tried to get his attention. When Rand finally noticed that Mukota was waiting for him, he displayed the mountain of materials he got from processing the dragon and said that the past days were the best days of his life. He asked Mukota to buy some materials for the guild, and Mukota agreed because he became broke after buying the magical stove. Rand was excited and requested to buy 2 bottles of dragon blood to make the strongest healing potions, and also half the liver because it is more effective than the blood. And finally, he requested a dragon fang to make an amazing sword. Mukota agreed to sell all the things, but was surprised why Rand was buying only a few things. Rand said to him that this purchase would empty the entire guild's treasure and he couldn't buy more, and offered to pay Mukota about 4,000 gold coins. And Mukota was very happy. Mukota was surprised how a few simple materials were worth the entire amount and thought about selling the entire dragon. For how much? Phil wasn't very affected because he didn't see any dragon and suspected that Rand was hiding the meat for himself. But Rand explained to him calmly that he stored the meat in a special refrigeration room and took them to see magical preparations preserving tons of the meat. Phil was happy with the game, and Sui helped Mukota carry the meat in the storage. While Mukota was finishing loading the meat, Rand became embarrassed and asked if he could taste a sample of the dragon. Mukota agreed and remembered his promise to share the meat, and the others also got excited to try the strange flavors. Rand took Mukota to his house to cook the meat easily for all of them, and Mukota settled in Rand's garden and took out the huge magical stove. Rand was surprised by the advanced technology Mukota had. When he saw him using his toolkit, he tried to show that he had one too. This was the first time Mukota saw someone else with a toolkit like his. Rand explained that natural elves have high magical abilities and also merged aerial and forest magic to become a first-class adventurer, and Rand continued talking. Mukota ignored him and started cook. First, he rubbed salt and pepper on the huge slices of dragon. After that, he peeled the vegetables and prepared. After cutting the onion and carrots, he put all the meat and vegetables in a cooking dish and poured olive oil and spices over. In the end, Mukota put the prepared meat in the oven and waited until it was fully roasted. And while the oven was working with its magic, his pets kept drooling from the delicious food smell. Mukota was watching, and Phil and Rand started rubbing against each other and trying to get closer to the oven. When the food was done, Mukota took the roasted meat and put it on the table for each one like this. He started testing it with a fork, and it was perfectly cooked. Then Mukota divided the roasted meat into thin slices and finished it with a sprinkle of Phil's favorite garlic sauce. After that, he told everyone to start eating, and everyone shouted bon appetit before they touched the food. And while everyone was swallowing the dragon meat, Mukota sat and took a piece of his share. The strange taste amazed him very much, and he felt that dragon meat combined the taste of different types of meats. Mukota understood now why Phil was so excited to try dragon meat, and the monsters weren't even talking and kept eating continuously. Phil thought that he must hunt more dragons for the future, but Mukota Mukoto was worried and told him not to be reckless so the dragons don't get mixed up. After a while, they all finished their first share and requested a second. Mukoto distributed the rest and asked Dora if he was happy eating his own kind. Dora said to him that his type is different from Earth dragons, so it doesn't count. Mukoto ignored Dora's suspicious words and looked at Rand crying on his chair. The elf thanked Mukoto for allowing him to try such a meal and felt that he was truly lucky to be able to process and eat one of the rarest creatures in the world. Mukoto was a bit crazy from Rand's strange happiness, but in the end, they all finished their meal. On the way home, Phil was full of energy from all the meat they ate. He was happy and shouted that they would visit the towers tomorrow, so Mukoto decided to send offerings to the matriarchs before he forgot. At night, he was browsing the sweets section in his electronics store, and the girls were watching him intently. So Vahan asked Nirnar if she had given Mukoto defensive skills, and she said to him, "No, it's just the wind blessing." So Vahan said that she is stingy and Mukoto might get injured without proper defense. The girls became afraid, and Vahan asked them what they would do if Mukoto died in the towers. Hephaestus reminded them that Mukoto is their key to sweets, and the girls fell silent. Suddenly, Nirnar entered a state of panic. She understood that she must protect her living sweets distributor at any cost. The other girls also understood their mistake, so Hephaestus said to Mukoto that he had prepared a special blessing for him, and Mukoto strongly refused to take, not wanting to be bound to another matriarch, and this upset Hephaestus, but he gave him the blessing without his consent. Vahan laughed, happy that he could extort more drinks from him, and the girls also celebrated, happy that Mukoto is now safe. The next day, Mukoto went to the tower entrance with his team, and there he met the calm registration clerk from the first city, and she introduced herself as Vina. Mukoto was surprised why she changed cities, and she explained to him that the Dulan Guild requested help from other guilds because these towers have become popular recently, and she was finishing the registration calm. Mukoto understood that she was there just to look at Phil's cute form. When they went out with the team, Vina looked at Phil and fell in love with his appearance. At the tower entrance, Dora and Sui were excited for the challenge. Mukoto's legs went weak as he looked down into the dark entrance. Phil thought to remind him that there is no turning back now. After gathering his courage, Mukoto finally went down the stairs, and while they were descending the first floor, Phil smelled some weak monsters and noticed that the strongest monsters and treasures are found around floors 15 and 10. So Phil told him to ride on his back to reach the good part. Mukoto screamed in fear, and Phil cleared the corridors and crushed every monster in the way. Suddenly, an arrow appeared out of nowhere and almost hit Mukoto. It was a monster, but Phil's shield blocked the arrow. He said to him that he had triggered a trap by accident. Mukoto was surprised how the towers had complex traps like this, even though they are natural. Phil explained to him that every tower is like a living being that deceives humans with treasures and kills them with monsters, and consumes their nutrients. During the explanation, stronger arrows hit the shield, and Mukoto was very startled. One of the traps activated a huge pit, but Phil used wind magic and flew over it. Boast he mocked the towers and their weak traps. Dora and Sui praised him for his skills. After a lot of running in the last stretch of floor 10, Mukoto asked him what he wanted to do. He told him the monsters are still weak. They knew that. The boss of this floor is a poisonous spider, and Dora was excited that he could slaughter them easily. Phil went direct to the boss room. There, they found a group of adventurers trembling in fear, and Mukoto reassured them about his pet. He asked them why they were gathered in front of the room door, and they explained to him that the towers have unwritten rules. Before a party finishes a boss fight, others cannot enter the room. The only way is if they request help, but after that, they will take all the loot. And they warned Mukoto that there are evil parties who steal loot from others. Mukoto sat and waited, and his pets got a bit bored, but he reminded them to be patient. Then the last group came out and told him to enter. He was surprised why they were returning from the floor instead of going deeper, and they explained to him that the stronger monsters were too much for them. Mukoto agreed and entered the boss room. The boss room was pitch black, and he found the terrifying poisonous spider charging it. Mukoto screamed like girls, but Dora burned it with dragon fire. Proud Dragon flew around them, happy that he could use his abilities after the war matriarch's blessing. After its death, the boss dropped strong loot, and Mukoto collected the spider's legs, understanding that the towers process elements automatic and give him the best parts. Despite the tiredness, Phil ran to the next floor, and there they faced a scary orc leader as the last boss before Mukoto could get over his fear. The team turned the orc into mincemeat. After floor 11, they continued exploring the towers, but all of them got tired from using mana. Mukoto noticed their hunger and thought of a place for dinner. Phil inspected the place, and they reached an open room and found some parties resting. Mukoto's team sat in the corner and found a surprise. Werner's team was there. They were surprised and saw a familiar face. Werner shook Mukoto's hand, and Mukoto was very happy to meet his old friends. They all sat together, and Werner explained that his team entered the city recently to explore the towers. Mukoto told him that he was planning to visit the coastal city of Berlin, but Phil was excited to go to the towers first, and while they were laughing at Phil's antics, they noticed Mukoto's new pets. They were fascinated by Dora, and Mukoto introduced them as a pixie drag. Then they asked him about Sui. Mukoto, proudly like this, told them that he is a nuclear explosive in the form of a slime. The girls fell in love with the cute monsters immediately and started merging merging in love for Sui and Dora. Werner was surprised how Makoto managed to get strange new pets besides Phil, but Makoto reminded them that they are just gluttons with nothing but food, and Makoto was laughing at his suffer. He decided to share some of his feast with the team. When he found out their meal was worth tens of times his wealth, Werner hesitated a bit, but agreed to share because he didn't want to miss the food too, and he saw that Werner's team had some bread, so Makoto took out his wiver stew to serve it with the bread. At first, the team hesitated to eat the expensive meal, but after the first bite, they swallowed it immediately, and everyone praised the food. Makoto felt happiness, but then everyone asked what type of meat he used in the stew, and when he revealed it was wiver meat, the team almost choked from shock. Werner apologized to Makoto for eating such an expensive ingredient. Makoto said that Phil had hunted about 3 carriages of wivers. They saw that he had a large quantity of meat, so they thought a bit, but in the end, they requested a second portion. After they finished eating, Werner's team got up to explore the floor. Makoto wished them good luck, and they left, and Phil reminded him they must move to the deeper floors, and they started running in the deeper levels, treating the poor bosses in the towers like stray dogs. When they reached floor 16, Makoto noticed the atmosphere became more spark. Phil explained to him that all towers change when you go deeper, and suddenly he stepped on a trap tile, and the whole tower started shaking. Makoto held on to Phil, who noticed a huge rock falling from behind him. Makoto started running like a chicken before Phil broke the rock with an aerial explosion. The force of the explosion threw Makoto on his face, but he got up again. After a while, they reached floor 20, and Dora asked Makoto if he was impressed with his team's strength. Makoto wasn't interested, but he stopped when Sui called and pointed to a secret area in the wall. When Makoto examined the opening, he found a hidden treasure chest inside. He started praising Sui for discovering the treasure before opening the chest. Phil grabbed his hand and reminded him that there might be a trap. When Makoto used appraisal on the treasure, he discovered it was trapped with poisonous gas. He told him not to open the chest, but Phil volunteered to open it instead because the Great Blessing protects him from poison. Before Phil opened it, Makoto got a message from Nernar saying to him that since he has 3 small blessings from the girls, he can withstand the poison without problem, and she confirmed to him to enjoy the tower challenge. Makoto got up and said to Phil that his 3 small blessings had become like the Great Blessing. When he opened the chest, poisonous gas exploded, and after the gas disappeared, Makoto looked inside the chest and found it empty. He was upset that he was tricked, and this encouraged him to go deeper to find a real treasure. After exploring floor 21 a bit, Makoto found a larger treasure chest, and Phil noticed that there must be something special this time. Makoto examined the chest before opening it and found it was just a hidden mimic, but with 3 deadly monsters with him, he felt encouraged and decided to open it. He took out the mithril sword and went to open it, and the chest suddenly opened its toothed mouth and attacked. Terrified, Makoto, who was afraid, hit the sword on the mimic without thinking, and it was devastated from his blows, becoming a wooden plank. And after a while, the defeated mimic turned into a real treasure chest, and Makoto opened it. Inside were valuable jewels and accessories. Next to them, Dora found the door to floor 22, and they all went through it. This time, Makoto was shocked when he saw the floor was open instead of closed corridors. Even Phil was excited to see the new thing, but Makoto was afraid of unexpected risks. So Phil sensed an inverted presence in the area and started running towards it quick. After a while, he stopped at an open area with a horde of giant killer mantises. Their attacks scared Makoto, but Phil burned them all immediately. Makoto thought, why even get scared? And Dora and Sui started yelling at Phil for not giving them a chance to kill. Makoto told them to take their turns in fighting so everyone can enjoy. They agreed, and all of them followed the fair advice. So when they encountered a bear after that, Dora entered the battle, and the excited dragon pierced the bear's body like a knife, and Sui faced a horde of poisonous butterflies. Phil cautioned Sui that the butterflies could suck her body fluids, but Sui just heated them up with all her laser. After a while they were walking on the floor, Phil felt that the previous presence was getting closer. Before he went to check, Makoto stopped Phil and said maybe it's the floor boss, and suggested they enhance their abilities first with food from his electronic store. Phil knew they were strong enough, but he didn't miss a chance to get some extra sweets. They sat and ate, and Makoto decided to get fancy wog with some other foods. And while they were watching him arranging the food, everyone started drooling. As soon as food arrived, they swallowed it all quickly before requesting a sec. Makoto was amazed by the speed and gave them the second batch and sat eating his share. Before his pets finished, they requested a third batch. When they finished, full monsters sat rest. Makoto decided to check Phil's statistics and was shocked by a 50% increase. Then he looked at Dora and Sui, and they had a huge increase too. Makoto thought that he might be exaggerating, but said it's fine since they will face a boss. His partners were curious to know his increases, so Makoto opened his statistics list and found that his increase was only 5%, and this made everyone a bit sad. After they finished, they started walking towards the presence that Phil was sensing. The 3 monsters were excited for the fight, and Makoto was nervous. Suddenly, Phil was surprised by the presence of a snake, a hisoki of Esra. Makoto almost died from fear. He noticed that the snake could emit poisonous smoke that would ruin his stomach, but Phil told him there was no need to worry thanks to the blessings. Sui and Dora also prepared for battle, and Makoto hid behind him like a complete coward. Phil reminded him that he has a great blessing, but Makoto Mukoda wasn't brave enough to participate. Tired from his weak position, the monsters moved forward to face the snake. The snake immediately emitted poisonous smoke at them, but they all ignored it and continued the attack. Phil paralyzed the snake with an electric shock, and Sui immediately melted its neck with acid, then finished it off and stabbed its neck immediately, and it fell dead. And Mukoda's deadly pets were very happy with Victor, and Mukoda felt overwhelmed by their monstrous strength. Since the boss was defeated, he found a magical circle that would transport them to the next floor. He warned Mukoda that everyone must touch the circle at the same time so no one is left behind. Dora rode on Mukoda's head, and Sui jumped into his lap. Then, Mukoda held onto Phil and activated the magical circle with his palm. The circle lit up immediately and transported them to another cave. Mukoda noticed that this floor was very large, even though it was similar to the previous floors. Phil saw an opening in the wall, and they all went through. Inside, Mukoda saw huge monsters, and Phil explained to him that the floor was made large for the big monsters. Before Mukoda could start planning to defeat the monsters, the team immediately entered and destroyed them from existence. And after they finished, they explored the giant floor. And since the space was very large, everyone got tired from walking. Mukoda decided to cook a special meal for his pets, but he stopped when he noticed a strange area. He discovered it was a safe zone with no monsters around, and Mukoda decided to take out his cooking equipment. When he brought out the food, the monsters went crazy from extreme hunger and ate sandwiches and rich soup and ended up exhausted. Mukoda asked Phil if it was time for sleep, and Phil nodded in agreement. But before they rested, a group of injured adventurers arrived at the safe zone. After they placed their injured comrade, Mukoda asked if he had a healing potion. He immediately took one out and ran to them. The leader poured the potion on the wound immediately, and the wound dissolved instantly. The leader was surprised and asked if the potion was of the high-grade type. Mukoda confirmed to him that it was of higher quality than normal. Then he asked the leader if his comrade was okay, and he said to him that he would recover immediately thanks to the potion. Their team, which was reassured, started crying from happiness. The leader introduced himself and said they were an A-rank team named Tames. After they thanked Mukoda for the potion, they offered to pay 15 gold coins. Mukoda felt the price was too high, so he offered them a lower-grade potion instead of the amount. The man was surprised by his generosity. Mukoda asked the leader how his comrade got injured. He told him that they encountered 3 Springans in the boss room. Mukoda asked Phil if the Springans were that dangerous, and Phil told him that the Springans are bigger than the Mantis boss. Tempest explained that the first time he entered the floor, there was 1 Springan, but he returned the second time and found 3, and his team was defeated by them. But he was sure Mukoda would be fine because he had the legendary Ferner with. Mukoda felt strange that even Tempest had heard about his deadly dog, but the adventurer reassured him he wouldn't reveal the secret. They said his team would return to the surface in the morning, and Phil opened his eyes lazily and said to Mukoda to sleep while he would destroy the Springans himself. In the morning, as they were entering deep into the towers, Mukoda asked if Tempest would reach the surface safe. They reassured him that they would manage fine, especially since he gave them some stat-boosting sandwiches. They reached the boss room, and Mukoda saw the Springans sitting cross-legged. He was very afraid of the powerful monsters, but the team immediately charged after his pets turned the Springans into fossils. Mukoda entered and found a magic bag in the loot. He noticed that time passed in it like real life, and he took it with him. And while Mukoda was collecting the rest of the loot, he started feeling it was wrong to take his partner's share. Phil didn't care and said to Mukoda that the next floors are full of huge monsters. Mukoda decided to fight the bosses on the next floor, but he fell to the ground screaming like a child. The monsters tried to hit him, but his perfect defense skill nullified all their attacks despite their strength, and he was too afraid to attack, so Dora finished them off for after. They finished the floor. The team cleared the next floors quickly and reached floor 29. Mukoda was surprised that they were only 2 floors away from finishing the towers. He entered the teleport, and when they appeared on floor 29, they saw a huge desert in front of him. Mukoda was annoyed by the extreme heat, but his pets went crazy with excitement. He rode on Phil's back to start exploring, but they quickly lost their energy due to the heat. When they stopped, Mukoda noticed he was completely dehydrated, so he took water from his bag. Luckily, Dora saw a nearby rock, so they went to rest under its shade. Mukoda felt burning from the heat. Phil created an air barrier to protect them from the hot air. Mukoda was amazed by the barrier's strength, and Phil reminded him that he could use it for a few days before its mana ran out because they had to find the floor's exit. Mukoda decided to conserve and ordered some summer products. After getting a summer hoodie and sunglasses, he bought some rehydration drinks. After they drank the drinks, he ordered ice cream to encourage them. Everyone was happy, but reality returned when they started walking in the desert. Phil reminded Mukoda that the temperature would drop drastically at night, so they had to walk a lot during the day. And while they were wandering in the desert, they encountered huge sandworms, and when night approached, they gathered around the campfire. Mukoda felt very cold, and Phil told him outside the barrier it was hotter and colder. Mukoda had no choice, so he ordered some heating pads and warm clothes. Then he took out a pot and cooked hot food, and everyone regained their energy. After a long time of cooking, he prepared hot noodles, and they all ate them and felt warmth in their stomachs. Phil told Mukoda that they were very close to the floor boss, and Mukoda said to him to sleep well before the battle, and they all slept on warm food. wins. In the morning, it was the final floor boss, a powerful sand, but Phil defeated it with the final floor boss, a powerful sand, but Phil defeated it with one lightning strike. After the boss was defeated, the magical circle appeared in a huge space. Phil asked, "Ready for the final floor?" And everyone agreed. Phil placed his palm on the teleporter and activated, and it took the team immediately to face the final boss. In that moment, the monster was huge, and everyone was excited for the fight. Dora flew and launched Sui towards the monster, who shot acid at it. After that, Dora charged at the giant monster, but it easily threw them both against the tower walls. Mukoda ran quickly to check on his injured companions, and they all noticed how strong the boss was. Phil explained to them that the giant monster is naturally resistant to physical and magical attacks, but with each hit, it takes some damage. Suddenly, the monster charged at them, and they all dodged it before it sprayed on the wall. Phil told them to attack with all their strength to break the monster's defenses, and the whole team attacked together. Mukoda noticed that the monster seemed unaffected, but Phil reassured him that with each hit, it would weaken bit by bit. Phil told Sui and Dora to continue the attack, and they started, hitting the monster with small collective blows. The big monster roared in anger, but it couldn't any of its smaller opponents. After that, Dora prepared a huge set of ice spikes, and finally, they pierced the monster and made it bleed for the first time. The team was encouraged by the progress, and Dora and Sui thought they would win, but suddenly, the monster started charging a very powerful beam and shot it at Mukoda. Luckily, Phil saved him with a solid ice sheet. Phil noticed that Dora's attack was very effective because Sui had weakened the monster's armor in the place where she had hit. Based on this information, Phil told Sui to spray the monster with slime acid. Sui heard and started growing until he became huge and sprayed the monster with acid, and the strong acid melted the monster's sturdy armor, and this allowed Dora to wound the monster more with his blows. After the monster was weakened enough, Phil told Sui and Dora to step aside, and then he launched the final lightning strike that hit the monster in its weak. The monster roared in pain before taking its last breath, falling to the ground. After the giant monster was defeated, everyone celebrated the great victory, and Mukoda ran to see the loot. He found a legendary sword named Wolf and equipped it immediately, and realized that if the news spread, he would become a trend. Mukoda put the sword in his item box. Phil told him to serve the food because he was tired, and Mukoda was surprised why they wouldn't return home first, but Phil was surprised and didn't want to wait. Finally, Mukoda decided to reward his team for their great effort and started preparing a huge meal of fried foods. They all ate happily after a very tiring day, and with this, our story for today has ended. So before we end our story, don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video, because this is what encourages us to continue. And if you are new to our channel, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get every new video. Goodbye.